This video is not intended as financial advice. By the end of this year, Bitcoin could hit 200K, ETH could hit 12.5K, and Solana could hit $750, or even 1,000. That is just one of the predictions I got from Claude, and I have 4 other state-of-the-art models, all of which were asked the same question to give me their best predictions for the 2025 bull run for crypto. Topic by topic, we'll start with BTC price. All of the models agreed that Bitcoin is going to hit at least 150K by December 2025, and Claude was the most bullish, and it suggested that it could go up to 200,000. And in overall, I would say Claude for Sonnet was the most bullish in this case. I tried this exercise throughout the time, and the answers do differ depending on what time you ask them. So I will leave my whole prompt that I used in the description and in the pinned comment if you'd like to get the most up-to-date information from the model for yourself. So here we have the most, again, bullish 200 and the lower end 150K. And all of them cite the same reasons about the ETFs, inflows, and the supply shock dynamics after the halving. Basically, all of them are very confident about it and are very happy about BlackRock. And I would say 185K seems to be a common thread that runs through them. Next, we have the ETH price. ETH price was also pretty big range. However, the most bearish one here was ChatGPT with 6.5K, which is also not small. It's almost 2x from the current numbers. Maybe we will see something on the higher end of that, maybe something closer to Grok. Grok was in the middle, surprisingly. I was thinking, honestly, Grok would be the most bullish one, but no, it was surprisingly middle ground, and it suggested 8K for ETH. And Claude, again, was the most bullish one with 12 to 15K. But many of them cite the Ethereum ETF and L2 expansion. And also here, layer 2s are mentioned all over the place. So layer 2 is here, layer 2 scaling here, layer 2 scaling here, layer 2 scaling. So everybody is super bullish on layer 2s in this regard for ETH. Next one is actually pretty interesting because I asked each one of them to pick 3 altcoins of their choice, and everybody thought of Solana as their first choice, which is sensible and honestly what was expected. Claude 4, as I mentioned previously, was the most bullish one in this case with 800 to 1200 range, and it cites AI applications as the main reasons for it. I wonder if it means AI meme coins or something like that, because I'm not sure. Maybe I'm missing something, but crypto X AI is yet to be like something valuable. There is certain potential there, and there is a lot of, bullish narratives, but something useful is yet to come, and I hope it will. Otherwise, there is a lot of speculation for sure. But many of the other ones are much more, medium in their prediction. How do I say? Not moderate, that's what I meant. So 450, and 500 and 750 from DeepSeek. Then we go to the alt number 2, and here we see a little bit more diversity than with the first one, but yet again we see the repetition, and this time we see Link from Chainlink. So that's the oracle, the major oracle that many institutions outside of crypto are also partnering with when they want to get into crypto. So I have no doubt that AI could gather a lot of news, a lot of bullish news about it, and therefore form its opinion about it. But there is a pretty big range, honestly, with 75 from Gemini 2.5 and up to 250 from Claude 4 Sonnet. Very bullish this time. I'm surprised how bullish it is. Let's have a look at other coins that they picked. So Grok 4 picked XRP. There is a lot of stuff about XRP on X. And my last video was about XRP and Coin Network, and I received a lot of views from XRP lovers. So thank you for that. Thank you for your comments as well. I appreciate it. And if somebody loves XRP, can you please leave me more comments under this video as well? Grok predicts XRP to go to $10. That would be pretty high market cap, and honestly, for all of them to go as high as the models predict would be pretty high market cap. But the reasoning here is that there is institutional demand and institutions have more money, and therefore we could expect higher numbers. But let's see. Right now, XRP it's 3, so it would be 3 1/3 X from its current numbers. Honestly, that's not unreasonable, but that still would mean a high jump in market cap. But other than Link and XRP, we have another prediction from ChatGPT 4.5, and that is Sui at $25. I wouldn't say that's unreasonable because Sui has shown incredible performance over the past months, and despite being non-EVM chain, and it beat Aptos, I would say, in terms of its online presence, in terms of its developer friendliness. So let's go to the third alt. That's where we see a bit more variation. Polygon was a choice for Claude for Sonnet. And it picked Matic and it projected $8 to $12, driven by enterprise adoption and its role in Ethereum scaling solution. I wouldn't say it's the primary Ethereum scaling solution, honestly, at this point. Like, what is there? Arbitrum and Base and Optimism are the three primary ones where all the activity happens. Many other L2s that are newer that are being added, like many of them are just kind of ghost chains. And I heard that projects right now are even losing money by deploying on them. But the enterprise part about Polygon being an enterprise solution, because, they're so old and they're so kind of almost institutionalized. And now we go to the next one, and that is Cardano, one of the cult favorites. That's ADA at $5. I wouldn't be surprised if there were higher predictions on Twitter that you've seen. Many of the, normies Web2 people have heard of Cardano. They've heard of, from what I know, of like Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, and Bitcoin. And Solana, not even that much, which is interesting, despite Trump launching its coin on there. But anyways, Cardano, we got it. Solana at $5, not too bad. So we also have Avalanche. It was only mentioned once by Gemini 2.5 Pro. Not bad. It's also cites its, integrations with Web2 and honestly just physical infrastructure companies and gaming projects, as it mentions. And, the subnet architecture could technically work for that. As coins goes up, as coins go down, you can invent any kind of reasons for going up and down, but the foundation for many of them is indeed there. The technical foundation is indeed there, but it's not always the reason why they rise. DeepSeek and ChatGPT gave, I think they're biased in this regard because they are all AI and they picked an AI token. So Render is one of the leading AI GPU compute tokens. So it's a platform for distributing for renting compute power, and it's one of the older ones. So other ones that I think in this field are like Claude, Akash. But anyways, Render was picked by both DeepSeek and ChatGPT, as I mentioned. And they all say that this is especially riding the wave of AI models right now, which makes sense, not unreasonable. And I think this sector has performed recently pretty well. And it actually has some utility, unlike many of the other coins. So I think it's also pretty reasonable, but the numbers they cite are quite different. So ChatGPT predicts $20 and DeepSeek expects $45. And now let's go to the timelines. And here it was a little bit confusing because that's where you see AI models were not perfect. They were speaking as if they were in some like December or November 2024, even though they were referencing current data. So a little confusing and a little bit out of touch with reality sometimes. However, they agreed on many, cyclings on the typical cycle of the accumulation, consolidation, altcoin season part. But they were a little bit divergent in terms of the specifics. Q1 is when market reached its first peak according to Claude. Maybe it's just lagging. Maybe it's expecting the market to move faster than it actually did. Then it says that there is going to be a 20 to 30% pullback after the first all-time highs. So we kind of have this pullback after the all-time high, so maybe it's correct here, but not correct on the timelines. And then Q3 and Q4 are about the rally and the final rally in December. And all of them agree that the final December 2025 is going to be final. So I would keep an eye especially on Q4 and be careful around that time. Now let's go to Grok. It was much more current and it seemed to be more in touch with reality, and it talks about the current BTC price and the all-time high BTC price of 123K. However, it expected a Fed easing the rates and sparking a 15% rally, which did not happen. And instead we had a downturn. The markets did not look good on that day. So Q4, October to December, is peak acceleration, just like the previous model, and ETH hits 5K plus on staking ETFs, alt surge 2-3x, and then inflection is going to be in October, where regulatory wins drive global adoption, and November, institutional buying pushes market cap to 4 trillion. Well, that would be nice. And December year end and their FOMO kicks in and profit taking with 10-15% volatility. The reasoning here is pretty solid, but let's see if other models agree with it. And we got to Gemini 2.5. Q1 and Q2, it says that the market will likely continue its upward trend, which did indeed happen. And we can expect periods of consolidation and healthy corrections along the way, which is indeed what keeps happening. There are some corrections, but they're not like awful. And this kind of, shakeout, people are hoping is going to be the last shakeout, but it never is. And if we call it healthy corrections, it sounds much nicer. So thank you for that. I guess I'll steal that word. And then in Q3, the bull market is expected to accelerate with prices reaching new all-time highs. That's what everybody expects to see. Bitcoin and ETH both started rising again today, so that could be nice to see. But then we go Q4, and that's when the peak is expected here as well, between September and October. And after the peak, we can expect a significant correction as seen in previous cycles. And it was pretty confident, and it says that the consensus rating among experts, among like the news outlets that it read, is 7 out of 10. This checks out. Everybody said almost the same thing, but slightly different in terms of the dates. Then we go to DeepSeek R1, and Q3, it says it's going to be the accumulation phase where BTC tests 100K. Here, because it did not have access to the web, I guess this was put into some old news, and that's what it is referencing based on its last update. And it says that it tests 100K. I suspect it means it's going to go up to 100K, not down, but well, hopefully BTC does not test 100K anymore. But then ETH ETF inflows begin and Fed cuts rates, which it did not. All the models expected the Fed to cut rates, which is funny that it didn't. And then in October, that's when it expects the altcoin season to start with SolLink and AI and RWA narratives to pick up. And then in November, we have the euphoria phase where retail FOMO peaks, which is expected. Honestly, I wonder if it's already here sometimes because I see the Forbes magazines with the Robinhood founder on there, and I'm like, maybe it's time to exit. But anyways, it also says that December 2025 is going to be the final distribution phase with the top for BTC and the leverage rush and the other market cap at 150 billion. I wonder where it took this. This is very random, out of nowhere. So ChatGPT here says that the Q1 is going to be the medium-term pick. It is also like rushing the whole cycle, just like Claude did in the beginning. So maybe this stuff will happen, but at a later stage, like 2 quarters later. In Q3, that's what's most relevant for us right now. Institutional US policy project crypto and spot ETFs flows peak and strong staking adoption begins. And this leads to BTC price 160K and ETH near 5.5K. This could happen. Let's see if this happens in September, but that would require a pretty significant rise from the current numbers. So I wonder if there is enough time. But with crypto, with how fast Bitcoin grew to 3K, maybe this could happen. And then in Q4, from October to December, that's also, as in the previous models, it says the final leg to new highs, BTC peaks. And the peak here is 180K, with ETH peak at 6.5K and sector rotations between layer ones. And from, more typical, big ones, Bitcoin and ETH to Sol, AI tokens, and DeFi leaders. In the contrarian take, the most agreed upon was the Bitcoin dominance persisting. So here we have the Grok 4 expecting the Bitcoin dominance to hold above 55% through Q4, so throughout the whole market cycle. and it references the overall technical reasoning and fundamental corporations and TradFi adopting BTC much more than altcoins, and more money in general, institutional money flowing into it, which I think is very reasonable. And we've seen a lot of persistence in BTC dominance recently, despite some alts rising. And then the other model that predicted that BTC dominance will persist as well was ChatGPT 4.5. Other than BTC dominance, what was interesting that Claude 4 Sonnet and Gemini 2.5 Pro went kind of different routes. So Claude 4 says that meme coins will underperform because regulatory certainty and more institutional buyers are demanding actual utility and something more, concrete. And Gemini actually says that the market currently is focused on speculative assets like meme coins, and things like Ethereum and infrastructure projects may underperform relative to them. I don't know which one I agree with more, but neither of those seems to be hard truth. It's like it's always somewhere in the middle, because there was really a big phase for pump.fun with all the tokens just going through the roof, right? And the pump fund token itself having a pretty interesting token sale. But then Gemini says that was overly bullish and the market is overly focused on speculative assets, which I think is a very valid critique. It is also worth to note that market cap for those coins, for like actually established infrastructure projects to rise, the price for them to rise, it takes a lot of money for any kind of movement. So it's much easier to see the speculation on meme coins because it takes very little money for that speculation to be visible. Like you invest $10,000 into a meme coin, it spikes up because it was basically zero from the beginning. And then you invest $10,000 in ETH, and you see nothing happening. Honestly, price might not even move because of its market cap. DeepSeek says that NFTs will underperform with the blue chip floor prices minus 40% versus altcoins, which is not a bad assumption. NFTs have been not the hottest thing recently. However, pudgy penguins have been very, very good on Twitter, so the stuff is going well for them. But for many other NFT projects, they are not as visible on my timeline, at least on X. Maybe it's just my bias, and I would tend to agree with DeepSeek. In terms of the historical pattern comparison, all the models agreed on it, and all the models agreed that there is a certain pattern cycling, just like Bitcoin halving starts the whole bull cycle, and there's a certain FOMO, and altcoin season starting. However, all of them also agree that this cycle is different and more big thing, that is institutional adoption and institutional money inflowing in here. And now let's go to the most speculative part of this video, which I think you all probably clicked through in the chapters. So we got to the sleeper picks. Claude 4 picked Ocean Protocol, which again, probably biased because it's connected with AI and compute. It's another one of those compute and DeepIn infrastructure. It provides a cloud compute, so you can rent out GPU power. And the Ocean Protocol is what allows for that. It connects it to it. And Akash, Claude, and Render are in the same realm, but it referenced Ocean Protocol in here. Then Grok 4 references Toncoin and Ton. It sits around 10 to 20 market cap, but often is overlooked below top narratives. So maybe it's reasonable to say that it's overlooked because you don't hear a lot about Ton despite its large market cap. And then we go to Gemini 2.5 Pro prediction, which is, I think it spent too much time on the internet for this. Token 6900 is an Ethereum-based meme coin that is inspired by the early 2000s internet culture. It recommends this as a sleeper pick, but the best part is that it says that the 80% is allocated to pre-sale investors. Please don't take anything in this video as financial advice, especially after seeing this. Then we see the DeepSeek prediction. It tells me about AIOZ network. It's so interesting. I've never heard of this one. Its current rank is 150 by market cap. It actually is, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's not exactly as it said, but it's 137 already. So this was taken like a day before from me recording this video. So maybe it did rise quite a bit in the past couple of hours. Actually, did have a bit of a rally recently. So it is in the Cosmos ecosystem, and unfortunately I haven't heard much about Cosmos recently. I hope it does well, but really not much news in my X. Maybe it's just my bubble. Hopefully yours is different, but not much news about it anywhere. So I wonder how Cosmos is doing. Are you still in Cosmos? Let me know if you still hold Atom and still follow the ecosystem. I wonder what the news are. But we're going to go to the next prediction from ChatGPT, and it recommends us to look at the graph, GRT, with the current market cap under top 100, and that is overlooked by many retail investors. So the graph is basically the API and blockchain data provider for many applications and L1s and all the other different kind of AI agents as well. So this makes a lot of sense. It's a very key piece of infrastructure, and the graph is one of the, I would say, the key state-of-the-art players there. It is pretty expensive in comparison to smaller players, but is kind of like Chainlink, but for blockchain data provisioning in different realm. And that was the last thing I asked our AI experts. I hope you found this video kind of interesting and you got something out of it. Let me know if you would like to see more, because there are many more questions I can ask them, and there are many more models I can try that were a bit more bullish than these. And yes, please leave the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.